Hey guys, welcome here to Lawrence County High School for another installment of economics, and this remember when the unit economics 2, which is economic theory. So far we've looked at Adam Smith, the father of capitalism. We've looked at Karl Marx, the father of communism. So both these are pretty much on opposite ends of the spectrum as far as an economy or a society should be run. Today we're going to find a guy who's sort of somewhere in the middle of these two extremes. Today we're going to look at a gentleman named John Maynard Keynes. Keynes was born in 1883, he died in 1964. That's the year I was born. And you may say to yourself, his name is John Maynard Keynes, but it's not, it's Keynes, trust me. So when we look at John Maynard Keynes, he's going to have some interesting things to say. First off, he is an English economist. So for the first time, at least in this class, we're looking at a real economist. Remember those other two guys were really philosophers. This guy is studying the economy, which it's later in time, and he's had time to read both books by Smith and Marx and countless other people who were writing about this sort of stuff. But now he's just really worried about economics. So he's going to write something called The General Theory of Employment in 1936. Actually, the General Theory of Employment, Interest, and Money, but we just like to shorten it. 1936. What's going on in the world in 1936, you history majors? The Great Depression. So he's going to write this idea about employment in the middle of the Great Depression. So think about that for a second. It is an attempt to understand the causes of the Great Depression of the 1930s. So let's look at some of Keynes's ideas. Here are some Keynesian concepts. Number one, what's the problem with the economy? Great Depression, what really goes wrong? Well, the problem is people aren't buying anything, according to Keynes. So a lack of demand can lead to firms producing fewer goods and services. Now remember, always think about supply and demand. Supply is how much there is to buy, demand is how much you and I want to buy. So Keynes is going to say, if you and I don't have a lot of demand for stuff, if we're not out there trying to buy things, then producers aren't going to produce things. Because what's the point? Why do I want to have a warehouse full of 10-speed bicycles if no one's going to buy them? Do you even ride 10-speed bicycles? Do you know what a 10-speed bicycle is? Maybe hoverboards, I don't know, whatever it is you buy. You don't want to make those things unless people want to purchase them. So Keynes is going to say this lack of demand, the fact that people don't want to buy stuff anymore, is going to have a big ripple effect because producers aren't going to produce anything. So if producers aren't producing anything, do they need workers? And the answer is no. Fewer workers are needed, which leads to unemployment, which further slows the economy. So if you were working at the factory that made 10-speed bicycles or hoverboards or whatever it is that people aren't buying now, you lose your job. So since you've lost your job, how much are you going to buy? You're not going to buy a whole lot. Are you going to take the family out to eat at restaurants? Are you going to go buy a new truck? Are you going to buy a bass boat? No, because you've lost your job. So when we stop buying things from other places, that means they will be laid off from their job. The people that work at the restaurant will lose their job. The people that build bass boats will lose their job. Now they don't have money to spend, so it will be a snowball effect. So in Keynes's mind, the idea that you and I have stopped buying things has a snowball effect on the economy, which is not good. Now he will say, if this happens, the economy may eventually fix itself, but we don't know how long it'll take. You know, if we rely on these market forces, the idea of the invisible hand, that someone will say, okay, you got this warehouse full of hoverboards, but you're selling them too high, so I'm going to make some and I'm going to sell them really cheap, and then people will come back and buy them. Will that work? Well, we don't know. Eventually, it may fix itself. But in one of Keynes' most remembered lines, he will say, the economy can fix itself in the long run, but what happens in the long run? How long is the long run? Will the economy fix itself in 8 months? Will it fix itself in 2 years? Will it fix itself in 10 years? Will it fix itself in 25 years? Well, guys, I got bad news for you. If it takes 25 years for the economy to fix itself, I'm probably not here. I'm dead at this point. So Keynes is going to say, in the long run, we're all dead. The economy will fix itself. You just leave it alone and give it enough time, but we don't know how long it is, and in the long run, we are dead. So we can't wait around. Keynes is going to say the government needs to take action when there's a problem. So the government needs to step in and reduce unemployment. Well, sure, that's a great idea. John Maynard Keynes, how do you reduce unemployment? Well, he's got a specific plan. He has something called compensatory spending. Now, if you look at this phrase here, compensatory means to compensate for something. Spending, we know what that is. So let's think along the lines that someone isn't spending money. That someone would be people who've lost their jobs. So we're going to have to compensate for that by having other people spend money. So the government should borrow money, pump it back into the economy through public spending. Now the government has to get its hands on money, but during something like the Great Depression, how do you get money? Well, you can't just raise taxes because one, a whole lot of people aren't working and people can't afford to pay taxes. So the government will just borrow money. And who do we borrow from? Well, we kind of borrow from ourselves. We print them up, we sell bonds, we're basically borrowing money. But we're going to put it back into the economy through public spending. Now what does public spending mean? It means we're going to invest in infrastructure projects, roads, bridges, and other public buildings. So during a time of depression, if the government will just get their hands on some money and they'll say, well, we're going to pay you people to go build a new road. We're going to pay you people to go build a new bridge or to build a new library or to build a new jailhouse. That creates jobs, and that's going to solve a lot of problems because whenever you get a job, you earn money. And when you have money, what are you going to do with it? You're going to spend it. All of a sudden, you're back to work, you have money in your pocket, you take the family to the restaurant. So the restaurant is back in business now, and they can hire their workers back. And the restaurant workers now work their job, and they have money, so they're going to go buy a new dresser. And the people who build dressers now have their jobs back, so they're going to go off and buy new bass boats. And you see how this keeps going. Excuse me. So the idea that workers earn wages, which will allow them to purchase more goods and services, like trucks and bass boats. So because basically the government kickstart the economy, they put money back into play by creating some artificial jobs of us building infrastructure projects. Remember, infrastructure means roads and bridges and things that basically a community needs. Once we get money in our pockets, we start to buy things and everything's better. This concept is known as demand-side economics, which basically says an economy will grow when an aggregate demand, which is total demand for all goods and services, increases. Break this down. Demand. You want to increase demand. Well, let's go back to this whole concept. There was no demand for stuff because people didn't have money, because they lost their jobs for whatever reason. And we can look at things like the stock market crash and just a lot of things lined up perfectly. A global slowdown in economics that caused the Great Depression. That's just a whole nother unit. But the idea that we weren't spending money, and Keynes is going to say, put money in these people's hands and they will go spend it. That's demand. It will create demand, and demand solves all the problems. When you and I start buying things, the economy starts to snowball again. So, when we look at this Great Depression, like we said, you can trace it back to the stock market crash in 1929, in which 9,000 banks failed. Guess what that meant was the banks had X amount of dollars in them. So people panicked, and they all ran to the bank and said, I want to get my money out of it. Well, after so many people take their money out, all the money's gone, because really the way banks works are they take your money and they keep it there and they loan it out to other people. They don't keep all of your money in the bank, and that's a whole other lesson. They keep a small fraction of it. So once the first 100 people came and got their money, everyone else's money's gone. And during this period, it was just gone, and you didn't get it back. There was no guarantee for it. The banks just said, sorry, you'll never get your money again, it's gone. So that happened. There was an unemployment rate of 25%. Think about that. 1 out of every 4 people were out of work. You know, if we look at what's going on right now with this COVID virus thing, was I seeing unemployment at 10% maybe, and that's been a few days ago, which is horrible. But during the Great Depression, 1 out of 4 people not working. So during this period, the United States elects a guy named Franklin D. Roosevelt as president. Now, the whole Depression thing had started under Hoover, and Hoover usually gets blamed with everything with the Great Depression, and that's probably pretty unjust if this stuff was coming along before him. He tried to do a few things to fix it, but it just really didn't seem to help, so that was really a black eye for Hoover, and he loses to FDR. So FDR becomes president, and he comes up with something called the New Deal. What that is, it's FDR's plan to help the United States recover from the Great Depression. So what he's going to do is he's actually going to be in contact with John Maynard Keynes. And he's going to say, well, we want to try this idea. How's this going to work? So Keynes comes to the White House and spends some time with FDR explaining the idea of compensatory spending to create jobs. So FDR buys into this, hook, line, and sinker. The New Deal consists of a series of programs that created jobs while improving the infrastructure of America. And these are also known as the alphabet soup programs. So just to sort of wrap all this up, John Maynard Keynes thinks whenever your economy hits a bad spot, the government has to step in and provide relief. Give people money, create jobs for people, and once people have money in their pockets, they will go out and buy other goods and services, which will kickstart the economy. And in this idea of building infrastructure, communities need roads and bridges and schools and jails and libraries. So the community gains because they get all the stuff they needed anyway. It put people to work, and it creates demand for goods and services because people have money. This is Keynesian economics. Does any of this sound familiar? Think about what's happening right now. The president and Congress got together, and they're going to send every person, every working person, $1,200. Why are they sending us that money? To help us pay rent and help us buy gas, to get us through, but also so we'll spend some money and maybe keep some businesses afloat while we try to get through this coronavirus thing. You know, that's going back to, that's Keynesian economics. We'll stop here and we'll come back later and look at more of the New Deal programs because there's a whole list of them that are just fascinating to look at. So have a nice day, and we'll talk economics probably next week.